Week 7 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first guy, Sam Howell of the Washington Commanders. To Sam Howell, he's been playing solid football for this Commander team so far this year. Besides one game, he's put up at least 17 or more fantasy points this season in each game besides Week 3 versus Buffalo. So the last few games here for Howell, Week 4 at Philly, 290 pass yards, a touchdown, 40 rushing. Week 5 versus Chicago, 388 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 19 rushing, 2-point conversion. In Week 6 at Atlanta, 151 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. So a good matchup coming up here at the New York Giants. We know their secondary has a lot of young players in it. Sam Howell, he's a gunslinger, and he's a tough quarterback as well that stays in the pocket, makes the plays, and he always looks to extend the play. So with a good matchup coming up, and like I said, playing great football, and one of the sleepers so far this season here out of nowhere. He's available right now in 62% of fantasy leagues. His next quarterback's Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr, I know he's been an up and down fantasy option throughout the years, starting with the Vegas Raiders, but Derek Carr coming off a monster game with 353 pass yards, a touchdown, and an into at the Houston Texans, and a tough loss, obviously. But this week here, Thursday Night Football, usually a high-scoring matchup on those Thursday night games. We've seen it week in and week out for the most part. And the Jacksonville Jaguars do give up the 8th amount fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So right here, good weapons, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, who's healthy so far this season. Rashid Shaheed, he's really emerging. Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. So a lot of good weapons on this offense here for Derek Carr and this New Orleans Saints team. And right now, he's a quarterback I would go out there and get. It's a streaming option or 2 quarterback leagues available right now in 75% of fantasy leagues. What a good matchup, like I said. And he's always getting the yards as Derek Carr. So far in the season, for Carr, he's already has 1,500 yards. So right now, while he's out there in a bunch of leagues and has good weapons, he's a quarterback I looked at this week. The next quarterback, Joshua Dobbs of the Arizona Cardinals. So Dobbs, he's been on this waiver wire list a few times this season. I know the last few performances haven't been great for Joshua Dobbs, where it's been mediocre to poor outings, but Week 7 going to Seattle, I know 12th man is there obviously, but Joshua Dobbs, he runs the football pretty well. Decent weapons, Zach Ertz, Hollywood Brown, Rondo Moore, and the backfield now. Obviously no more James Conner a few more weeks with the injury, but Keontae Ingram, I believe, looked pretty decent in that game. So right now, if you're desperate at quarterback in 2 quarterback leagues or deeper leagues, he's available right now. Is Joshua Dobbs as well, 85% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games, like I said, he didn't do much. Week 5 versus Cincy, 166 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 windows, a fumble loss. And then Week 6 at the Rams, got off to the good start, but he only finished 235 passing, an interception, 47 rushing, and a fumble loss. So right here, like I said, at Seattle, I think he could make some plays in that ball game, and available in 85% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback's Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I know Baker coming off a tough matchup versus solid Detroit defense. Only 206 pass yards and an interception in that one. But before that, Baker Mayfield, he was playing pretty solid football with 3 games over 18 fantasy points in the league. So right now, good matchup versus the Falcons. This one's in Tampa Bay. And we know the Bucs got to bounce back here in a division matchup with them and the Atlanta Falcons. So right now, Baker Mayfield, he's out there in tons of fantasy leagues, 71% of leagues. So right now, if you need a quarterback in deeper leagues, and a guy who's got decent weapons, obviously, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, even though he had a down ball game, Kate Ott and Rashad White, I think Baker Mayfield could go out there and put a mediocre performance on. So right now, if you're desperate at quarterback, I'm not saying there's great options this week, but definitely some options out there. With CJ Stroud on bye, some players banged up as well at the quarterback position. We saw Trevor Lawrence get banged up, Justin Fields. So right now, if you need some replacements, these are the guys out there in a decent amount of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final quarterback I looked at off the wire is Desmond Ridder of the Atlanta Falcons. In terms of a real-life quarterback, Desmond Ridder is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league, no doubt about it. But the last couple weeks here, he's actually put up some fantasy points. Week 5 with 28, and then in Week 6 here with 20 fantasy points. So right now, he's throwing the football a whole lot. He's got good weapons, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Matt Collins, Jonnu Smith having a breakout season once again here with this Atlanta Falcon team. And like I said, it's at Tampa Bay, and it's going to be a game where they're going to be throwing a lot, is this Falcon team. So I think Ridder, he's going to get yards. It's not going to be pretty, obviously, but fantasy points are fantasy points. Either it's garbage time or just playing good football. So right now, if you're desperate for a quarterback and a guy who's pretty much thrown the football 35, 40 times a game. He's available right now, Ritter, in tons of fantasy leagues at 92%. So that's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire here. 7 of the fantasy football season.